Hi everybody, this week's track walk is at Brands Hatch on the Grand Prix layout. This is a very tricky circuit and it will punish your mistakes, usually by braking your car. Before going out on track for a session, it's probably a good idea to decide if you want to run for speed and hang it out or dial things back a bit and ensure you complete a long run. Chances are that in a race you can pick up several positions just by staying on track. This week I'm just going to show you one lap, a 1 minute 43.944, which was at about 101% of the fast lap of the week at the time. Brands Hatch is a difficult enough track that running 103 to 104% and staying on track is probably equivalent to an aggressive 102% elsewhere. As usual, I'm on the baseline setup. I am using a Logitech G27 wheel and pedals with all aids and assists turned off. I am using the H-pattern shifter and a left foot brake. Beginning the lap, I want to aim the car between the second and third trees on the outside of the first turn. There's a gray marshal's stand and it makes a great reference. Here you can see I'm pointed too far to the left and I'll have to correct. Now we approach the first and most famous turn at Brands Hatch, Paddock Hill. You can now see that marshal stand that I want to be aiming just to the left of. I'm a little too far to the left, but right now it's not a big concern. I want to brake about 75 and I'm only going to use about half pedal. Since it's a short, soft braking zone, I won't have enough time to complete a 5-4 downshift, so I stayed in fourth gear through the start-finish straight and I'll stand fourth through paddock. Notice that I'm headed right for the green painted bit at the outside of turn-in. I don't want to drive over that, but I want to come very close to its edge. I'm going to turn in just before the 50 marker. Here I started my turn-in too early while I'm still braking, and I'm going to pay for it in the corner. In fact, I wind up goosing the throttle to keep the car from over-rotating at turn-in. There's a rise in the corner from turn-in to before the apex, and the car will tend to understeer here. The rise will crest before the apex, so the car will then move to oversteer. Since there's quite a big drop here, I want to be loading the rear with throttle, which is made more difficult by the car's balance changing with the undulations here. In this case, I've compounded the difficulty by turning in too early and inducing oversteer in the first part of the corner. Use as much of the green painted area as possible on exit. Just don't put a wheel in the gravel or you'll spin. The track out point is right where there's a huge change in the decline at the hill, and this will put a massive load on the left tires. The left front is going to act like it suddenly has a massive amount of toe-in applied, and the car will try to spin to the inside. Be ready to center out the steering, maybe even steering to the left as I do here, when you hit the track out point. Go down the short chute known as Haywood and approach Druid. For Druids, I prefer to be in second gear. I'll start my braking just before the 50 board and I'll trail brake down to almost apex. Once I've scrubbed off enough speed, I'll drop down to second gear. Note the left side of the track has a steeper and longer rise than the right side and it crests just after turn-in. If I try to stay to driver's left for the classic late apex line for a hairpin, I'm going to find that I've overslowed due to the steeper and longer rise, and that when I turn in, I'm going to pick up understeer from the fall off after the rise. I'll gradually start my turn in just after the 50 board and try to aim for the second or third red trash bin on the outside of the corner. It's a late-ish apex and I want to be trying to feed in the power all the way around. I'm going to try and stay off the curbing on the inside as it'll overload the left front and slow me down. At track out, I'm setting up for Graham Hill. I want the car over to driver's right and in a mostly neutral state by the time I get to the 50 board ahead. Graham Hill Bend requires a certain amount of aplomb, so I'm going to stroke my mustache and rakishly smoke a cigarette. I'll woo all the women, then brake just after the 50 board and begin my turn-in almost immediately. I'm not aiming to drive over the curbing on the right, as if I'm on it after the first couple of feet, I'll have missed my turn-in and will apex much too late. Since I'm still carrying my radius from the track out of Druids, I'm expecting the car to oversteer after turn-in, and I will respond by opening up my steering slightly and beginning to apply power. I'm at full power before apex, and I track out way to driver's right, and I'm up to fourth gear. Surtees is a third gear corner. I'll start my braking about a third of the way between the 50 marker and the beginning of the red curbing and get my downshift done. I want to stay to driver's right for almost the length of the curbing. I'm going to increase my steering input right before the end of the curbing on the right and try to squeeze on the power as soon as I can. Here I'm too far to the left, I've turned in too early, and I go to power too soon. A trifecta of mistakes that will cost me down the longest and fastest straight. The white painted line is a fantastic reference because where it meets the inside curbing is exactly where I want to apex. I'm trying to be at full power by apex so that I can be unwinding the wheel after the apex and not still be turning at maximum radius on the straight. There's a nasty bump in the curbing right before the apex, so try to keep the inside wheels off the curbing. I've stayed in fourth gear down the straight since I feel I have to overslow the car to be able to compete the 5-4 downshift for Hawthorne. Approaching the 50 marker, I'm aimed at the green mark on the tire wall to the outside. Once I'm past the 50 marker, I'm going to turn in slightly and begin braking. As the third gear marker appears, I'm completing my turn in and going to full power as the fourth marker appears. For Westfield, I'm again in fourth. I'm braking about a third to halfway between the brown splotches on the pavement and the 50 marker. Just after the 50 marker, I'll turn in and go to full power. Use plenty of the curbing on the inside, but don't use too much since the cut course penalty there is about 3 seconds and is not worth it. Here I was quite conservative as I tend to struggle with this corner and I'm usually too early with my apex or too far to the inside. Dingledale is also fourth gear. I usually rely on rhythm here as unfortunately there aren't really any good references. The trees are about the best references here and they're not very good. I want to brake just before the 50 marker, turn in and go to full power. Here I started everything too early and knew it right away, so I had to get out of the power several times and was much too late getting back to full power. For Sterling Moss, I dropped down to third gear. I find the baseline setup has too much understeer at apex to be in fourth gear, but if your setup is looser, you can and probably should carry fourth. Try and get the car neutral by about 75. Almost immediately after that, complete your braking and downshift. Turn in and go to power. There's quite a bit of banking here and the car will pick up understeer. Here I got more than I wanted and I had to come out of the throttle twice to get through the corner. For Clark, I prefer fourth as I feel I lose too much time overslowing the car for the downshift, but you might be able to get a better drive out with third. Brake about the 50 marker and turn in. Don't rush your transition here, as if you get loose, the elevation changes will probably cause you to spin. Aim for an apex about a car's length past where the curbing narrows up. The car will understeer with the ascent at the beginning of the corner, and then as the rise is cleared, the understeer will go away, so don't force the car to do anything it doesn't want to do. Just be patient with the throttle and steering. Get back to power, unwind the steering, and complete the lap.